You ordered your tribesmen to continue firing. The second volley of 115 arrows brought down another batch of enemies. The warriors who had just helped each other up were hit again. The wounded who had previously been shot in the limbs were hit once more, and this time they couldn't stand up at all. Some who had dodged the first wave of arrows went to help the wounded and were also shot. When the third wave of arrows came, the Fire Tribe people panicked even more. They wanted to run back, but you wouldn't let them get away with it. You immediately ordered your tribesmen to fire 5 volleys in rapid succession. The tribesmen were immediately excited when they heard this, and they all shot arrows frantically. The Fire Tribe's original force of 260 men, after these few rounds of arrow rain, instantly had only less than 50 intact warriors left, and less than 30 wounded. They scrambled and crawled to escape to a more distant part of the grassland. Fire Pair, who had been shot in the femoral artery, also followed closely behind the fleeing group. With the arrow stuck in his thigh, Fire Pair couldn't speed up. This guy was also a ruthless character. He directly and forcefully pulled the arrow out. Unexpectedly, the barb on the arrow directly tore the artery. He didn't run a few steps before falling to the ground, never to breathe again, and you led your tribesmen all the way in pursuit, running and taking the opportunity to have your tribesmen continue shooting arrows, until you had shot down most of the fleeing Fire Tribe members before stopping. Blood Disciple, who had followed you all the way, was stunned when he saw the corpses everywhere and the arrows stuck all over the place. He didn't expect these short spear arrows to be so powerful. You arranged for the tribesmen to clean up the battlefield, bring back the swordsmen, and pile the corpses together to bury them tomorrow. Blood Disciple pulled out a few arrows and told you that he wanted to join the Han tribe. You didn't give him a direct answer. You still couldn't believe what Blood Disciple had said about the Fire Tribe. You had to confirm it with those Fire Tribe youths before making a decision. When Blood Disciple heard that you actually had Fire Tribe survivors, he immediately became happy, hoping that he could join the Han tribe. Before long, Beasttooth walked up to you and reported the results of cleaning up the battlefield. There were a total of 248 corpses. Dozens of arrows were still missing, and it was too dark to find them. You waved your hand, arranged for everyone to retreat, and said that the rest could wait until tomorrow. At this time, Little Butterfly was anxiously waiting for you on the mountaintop. When everyone chased down earlier, you didn't let her go down. Only when she saw you return safely with the tribesmen did she feel relieved. Everyone had been highly stressed in combat, and had just cleaned up the battlefield, so the tribesmen were also very tired. After receiving your order, everyone went back to rest. You also called Beasttooth over and asked him to get some food for the 30 youths to eat their fill, and have them dig a pit first thing tomorrow morning to bury their own tribesmen. The next morning, these youths, who had only had one full meal in several days, began to busy themselves. Seeing that their fellow tribesmen who had come to attack the Han tribe had all died here, they were very surprised, and also very regretful that they had listened to Pear's words in the first place. After the pit was dug, you walked up to them and lectured them. You were all exchanged for white salt by the Han tribe, and you all had your own women at the spring festival. Everyone could have lived a good life in the Han tribe. Now that the Fire Tribe is finished, do you want to die in this pit with your tribesmen, or join the Han tribe, have children with your women, and live a good life? Choose for yourselves. Hearing this, the youths didn't even think about it and immediately cried and shouted that they wanted to join the Han tribe. Since you are willing to live, then I want to ask you a few questions. How many settlements does the Fire Tribe have, and where are they? How many women and children are there? The youths immediately scrambled to say everything they knew, afraid that they would be killed if they were too slow. Only then did you learn that the Fire Tribe still had about 50 men, and the rest were women and children. Roughly over 1.00 people. You decided to bring those women and children back, although it would be a burden. You couldn't bear to watch so many children starve to death. Next, everyone spent a morning packing things up, and after walking for half a day on the road, they finally returned to the Han tribe's settlement in the evening. The Han tribe had changed a lot. The new tribesmen lived in pointed roofed huts outside the wall, and there were simple fences outside. All the tribesmen ate together in the evening. Big Tree reported the situation to you. During this time, everyone's life was normal, and the new tribesmen were all finding things they were good at. The tribesmen from the Gu tribe and the Wen tribe participated in the gathering team and found some new edible plants, and a kind of deep red plant dye. You named this plant Red Beauty Gross, and secretly noted it down, so that it could be used to dye cloth in the future. The youths from the Thorn tribe and the Eel tribe participated in the fishing team and were able to get a lot of live fish every day. The Egg tribe and the Thistle tribe fell in love with carpentry, and after learning that those carts were all created by the chief, they instantly became your little fanboys. The Cave tribe and the Lotus tribe also had their own interests. The cave tribe participated in pottery making and brick firing, and the lotus tribe learned metallurgy and copper smelting. The pig tribe discovered a new sugar-making material, which was the roots and tubers of the man-eating tree, which could be made into brown sugar. Some of the youths from other tribes participated in the hunting team. However, you felt that you couldn't rely on hunting forever. With so many people in the Han tribe, the animals in the nearby forest would be eaten up sooner or later. In the future, you should try to catch live grazing animals and raise them. In addition, the rabbits raised in captivity reproduce very quickly, and there are already more than 500 of them. Moreover, the number of rabbits will increase exponentially this year, so there will be no shortage of animal skins. After listening to Big Tree's report, you immediately gathered the Han tribe's higher-ups for a meeting to discuss the tribe's future development. Shu the witch spoke first. There are too many new tribesmen now, and the cave can't accommodate them. Fires can't be lit in the grass huts, and many people won't be able to get through the winter like this. The elder also chimed in, saying that food and animal skins for the winter should also be stored up as soon as possible. Blood Disciple added that he was willing to lead the way to bring back all of the fire tribe's 1,0+ people. Everyone couldn't help but feel a headache when they heard this. There were already so many people, and if more than 1,0 more were added, they would only be able to rely on robbing to drink the northwest wind. But you just smiled. Most of those people are children. Although they can't help much on weekdays, they can't eat much either. As long as everyone is diligent, they can still be supported. Then you explain the next plan in detail. First, you need to build more rabbit pens, expand the breeding scale, and organize more people to hunt. The number of hunting teams needs to be reduced. Try to hunt by setting traps. Just have a few people go and check them every day. All the manpower saved will go to logging, digging rivers, and firing bricks, to prepare for building houses next. More irrigation canals need to be opened to irrigate the rice fields and plant more rice. The carpentry team and the metallurgy team should now focus on making tools, and make more axes for cutting trees and copper shovels for digging soil. Early the next morning, you assembled a team of 100 people to attack the fire tribe. In order to prevent those children from having too much resistance, you specially arranged for 10 women who could shoot arrows to be in the team. These people were led by Rat Big, with Beast Tooth as the deputy, and Blood Disciple was responsible for leading the way. Finally, Stone and Horned Deer were assigned. In case of emergency, they could ride the deer back to report. Everyone had to return before this ring moon. The men immediately set about preparing, and soon set off riding the Horned Deer. Meanwhile, you continued to assign tasks to the other tribesmen. The gathering team collected more vines to make rattan baskets, and winnowing fans to prepare for digging the river and building the wall. The youths of the cave tribe went to dig pits by the river to build fish ponds, so that the live fish that couldn't be eaten could be kept in them as emergency reserves. There was only one brick kiln at the moment, which was too inefficient for firing bricks, so 2 more would have to be built next. You appointed Big Mouth and Wooden Bucket as the leaders of the metallurgy and carpentry teams, respectively. The two collaborated to make tools first, and then to manufacture a manpower cable car. Little Butterfly, seeing that everyone had tasks, hurried over to ask what she should do next. You thought for a moment and asked her to plant rammy. And when the rammy grass grew tender branches, to propagate them by cuttings, striving to expand the planting area this year. Little Butterfly was focused on weaving cloth, but since the rammy grass hadn't grown up yet, she had to do as you said. Once all the work was arranged, it was now possible to get started on the most important thing. You called Elder and Rat Witch aside separately and told them about dividing the households and changing names. The 2 old men were bewildered, not knowing what you were talking about at all. You had no choice but to patiently explain to them that dividing the households meant that each adult man would form a family with his own woman and children. In the future, everyone would have a surname and a name. A surname would represent a tribe or family, and men and women with the same surname would only be able to marry after 6 generations. Now that most of the tribe's population came from different tribes, everyone could find a spouse within the tribe, as long as they didn't have the same surname. You also emphasized, it's not about having everyone live separately, but about giving each man his own hut to live with his family, so that the purity of the surname's bloodline can be ensured. And after boys reach adulthood, they must independently set up a household, find a woman to form a family, and must take care of their parents, just like their parents took care of them when they were children. In addition, tribal rules were established that, after everyone formed a family, men and women could no longer roll around in the grass with others. Those who disobeyed would be demoted to slaves for life. The men would go to mine, and the women would be specifically responsible for having children. That night, the 3 of you announced this matter in front of the tribesmen. Although the tribesmen didn't quite understand, They believed that what you said must be right. Next, the issue of dividing households in the Han tribe was handed over to the elder to handle. The issue of names was something you would do yourself. You would provide the surnames. And the names would be their original names plus the surname. After that, you and Big Tree began preparing for building the city. Measuring the land and laying out the lines. As you worked, you explained the plans for building the houses to Big Tree. Each house would occupy an area of 10 meters long and 10 meters wide, with a total of 3 rooms built, 1 for the adults to live in, 1 for the children to live in, and a place in the middle for cooking and grilling, as well as a small warehouse for storing firewood and tools, and a dry toilet dug by themselves. To build a brick house, you had to dig a trench to compact the foundation, and then build the walls with bricks and mud. Then, the roof beams would be covered with grass mats, then covered with mud and tiles. During the midday break, Little Butterfly brought you a white thread, excitedly saying that it was made from rabbit fur. Hearing this, you were very surprised and asked where the rabbit fur came from. Little Butterfly said that the rabbit bit it off its belly. Hearing this, you quickly said that it was a mother rabbit, and that she used the fur to make a nest for the little rabbits. But fortunately, the weather was warm, and the little rabbits should be fine. Little Butterfly also mumbled that she wanted to weave cloth and that she had tried pulling hair from the alpacas. But the alpacas spat at her. You were immediately amused by this silly girl, and promised to make her scissors and cut the alpaca hair for her to weave cloth. After that, you spent 3 days carefully making a pair of scissors. The scissors were to triangular sharp knives, one side flat and one side convex, with a fixed round hole in the middle, and the tail was cast with a slender copper strip and then polished. They were then riveted together with copper nails, and the cutting edges were finely polished. Little Butterfly was immediately excited and jumped up and down when she took the scissors, and happily went to cut the alpaca hair. You smiled and turned to look at the 2 brick kilns that were being built. This was the basis for all the work that would follow. You knew that if you wanted to build houses, you would need a constant supply of bricks, and the soil produced by digging the river was an indispensable raw material for making bricks. So, in order to build houses as soon as possible, you had no choice but to keep a close eye on the progress of these 2 tasks. Fortunately, everyone had worked hard together these past few days, and 2 brand new brick kilns had been built, and the river digging work was also progressing in an orderly manner. The new tribesmen had been living in the Han tribe for nearly half a month, and they watched the tribe change every day. And all of this was created under the leadership of the chief, and they couldn't help but regard him as a celestial being. At the same time, they were proud to be members of the Han tribe. You had to know that no matter which tribe they had been in before, it was impossible for them to have pottery for everyone and be able to eat their fill at every meal. The most important thing was that the white salt here was unlimited, which was something they had never dared to imagine before. And in order to be able to break away from these trivial matters, you were now calling on a few smart tribesmen, teaching them the knowledge of building houses, hand in hand. As long as they learn it, you would have more time to do other things. At the same time, the 100-man expeditionary force led by Ratbig quietly touched the mass grave, spying on the situation of the Fire tribe from a distance. By this time, the sky was already completely dark. The 50 men of the Fire tribe didn't know that the main force had been completely wiped out, and that the escaped warriors were also missing. The women and children of the Fire tribe were all locked in a natural cave. The entrance to the cave was narrow, only allowing 2 people to stand side by side. Only 5 men, completely unguarded, were guarding the entrance. They lit a bonfire at the entrance, sat around the fire, roasting meat, and eating midnight snacks. The remaining 45 men were busy making babies in the grass huts or tents, and all kinds of sounds were constantly coming from the grass huts. After observing clearly, Ratbig and the others began to take action. Because Ratbig felt that it was too dark here and that bows and arrows were not easy to use, he arranged for Beasttooth to take 10 men and 10 women, each with a bow and arrow, to quietly go down the hillside and shoot the few people at the cave entrance to death with a barrage of arrows. He estimated that there were not 10 people at the cave entrance, and that 20 bows firing 3 rounds should be able to solve the problem. Then he would lead the people to rush up. Beasttooth nodded in agreement. Blood Disciple followed Ratbig, taking the remaining 2 people in pairs to kill people in the houses. After all, the people in the houses were sleeping, and bows and arrows were useless. It was better to take them by surprise and rush in and kill them directly. Ratbig quietly sneaked into a tent. A Fire tribe man was lying on top of a woman. Ratbig gently pulled out a bronze axe from his lower back and stood behind the man. The woman saw Ratbig and was so nervous that she didn't dare to make a sound, even holding her breath. The man sensed something and had just turned his head when Ratbig smashed the axe down, smashing a hole in the man's skull. Blood and brains splattered all over the woman, but the man didn't fall down. The skull was stuck on the axe. Ratbig pulled hard, pulling the man and the corpse together, and finally stepped on the man's face to pull out the axe, and turned to look at the situation of the others. Blood Disciple was even more direct in the grass huts. He rushed in and smashed people's brains with a stick. From entering the house to the death of the target, it took less than 3 seconds. The woman who was being pressed by the corpse hadn't understood what was going on yet when Blood Disciple left. However, in another grass hut, a young man with his hair tied up had just crawled in when the man in the hut dodged the spear attack sideways, and was then pressed under him and strangled. Fortunately, the woman in the hut helped and took the short spear from beside the man. The young man's companion also arrived in time, and the short spear pierced the man's chest, immediately splashing blood on the spot. During the battle, some women screamed in panic, and some Fire Tribe men heard the screams, took out their weapons, and fought with the Han Tribe youths, resulting in deaths and injuries on both sides. Some youths were also injured and fell to the ground because the grass hut space was too small and the spears could not be used. Fortunately, Ratbig came to rescue him. The few people guarding the mountain cave on the hillside heard the noise and were still discussing it. At this moment, Beasttooth led 20 bows and arrows and arrived on the side about 100 meters away. He waved his hand and had everyone stand in an arc formation, draw their bows, knock their arrows, and shouted, "Fire!" The twang of bowstrings and the sound of arrows piercing the air rang out. 21 arrows flew towards the cave entrance. Under the 5 fires, the 5 people were exposed, and instantly 3 people were shot to death with several arrows in their bodies. One was shot in the arm, and one was blocked by the body of his companion. The one who was shot in the arm shouted out loud, but the second round of mounted archery arrived. The remaining 2 people were stabbed into hedgehogs. Beasttooth was not at ease and had them shoot 2 more rounds, turning the corpses into hedgehogs before leading people to rush up. There was no resistance above, and Beasttooth successfully took over the defense of the cave entrance, and also waved the torch down the hillside. The battle down the hillside ended quickly. Ratbig called the tribesmen to drag out the corpses and count them. All 45 members of the Fire Tribe were killed. One of Ratbig's side died and one was seriously injured, and 2 were slightly injured. The one who was seriously injured was a former Fire Tribe captive who had been converted. His collarbone was broken, and his flesh was torn open with a large gash. He probably wouldn't survive. In this battle, 2 were lost, 50 enemies were killed, and over 1,000 women and children were gained. At this time, the women in the houses came out and gathered together. A youth who had been captured by the Fire Tribe told them, "I was captured by the Fire Tribe. Now I have brought the Han Tribe to save you." The Fire Tribe chief went to fight the Han Tribe and was defeated. "They are all dead. You can come with us to the Han Tribe." When the women heard this, some of them recognized the youth with sharp eyes, and the bolder ones asked if it was true. The youth continued to say that it was true, that his tribe had no men left, and that the mountain cave had also been taken down by them. They could bring their children out. When the women heard that they could release their children, they ran to the mountain cave, and the people of the Han tribe followed. Only the wounded and Ratbig stayed behind. Ratbig asked the wounded man's companion to go to the mountain cave, and he knelt beside the wounded man's ear and asked him if there was anything he needed help with. The wounded man cried and said that he didn't want to die, that his tribe had been defeated by the Fire Tribe, and that he had finally survived and joined the Han tribe. He also had a woman and wanted to live a good life. Ratbig sighed, patted him on the shoulder, and said that he would take care of his woman, and then snapped his neck to let him go cleanly. Then he turned and walked towards the mountain cave. On the hillside, some women in the cave who had not slept heard the noise and wanted to sneak away in the chaos. As soon as they poked their heads out, they saw the men guarding the door being shot to death by a barrage of arrows, and were frightened by the 2 rounds of arrow rain and sat down on the ground. A woman with a big belly wanted to run, and another woman holding a child, whose belly was slightly bulging, said that it was useless to run. They had big bellies and still had children to raise. They simply couldn't support themselves as wild people. When the women heard this, they were stunned, squatted on the ground and smoked. They knew that they needed men, that women were at a disadvantage when pregnant and couldn't protect themselves. The female archers down the hillside came up. They were specially arranged by you. They walked to the front of the mountain cave, kicked the dead men, pulled out the arrows, collected them uniformly. The ones on the ground were directly put into the arrow pot, and the damaged ones were taken back to recast the arrowheads. The women in the mountain cave saw that the attackers were women, and they had actually won, and their eyes widened. The women cleaning up the battlefield smiled at the people in the mountain cave. This smile made the pregnant women at the cave entrance feel kindness. A woman holding a child stood up and asked the female archer in a trembling voice, Which tribe are you from? Can you take me away? I can twist ropes and skin animals. Can you take me with you? She felt that a tribe with female warriors was very strong and could resist many tribal attacks. Moreover, the women in this tribe should have a high status. The warriors could fight, and there was no problem with hunting. Such a tribe could protect her, so she wanted to join. The woman who was collecting the arrows didn't understand what she said, but just stepped aside to make way for the cave entrance and let them come out. The woman holding the child thanked her repeatedly and walked out supporting her belly. The other women followed. Dozens of women down the hillside ran up, followed by Han tribe warriors. A woman shouted excitedly, "Sisters, we can go. Those boys brought people to save us. My chief was killed by the Han tribe, and the men down the hill were also killed. The Fire tribe has no men left. We can join the Han tribe." Rat Big said to a youth who had been captured by the Fire tribe before, "Go and tell these women that we will take them to the Han tribe. We won't lock them up, and they will have food to eat. And they will work and live like the women in the tribe. We will never kill children. Let them follow us tomorrow." The youth nodded and guaranteed, and then began to look for his relatives first. The other youths were also looking for their families, and they cried to each other after finding them. Then they publicized among the crowd, encouraging the women to join the Han tribe. The women asked about the situation of the Han tribe, such as how many men there were, whether there was enough food, what kind of work they did every day, and whether they would bully women, etc. When they learned that the Han tribe could make a lot of pottery and weapons, had an endless supply of white salt, could raise animals, and could also raise wild animals to work, and that women didn't have to be locked up to have children, and that everyone had their own things to do, they immediately agreed to join. Even knowing that it was a 7-day journey away, they were determined to go. Beasttooth walked to Rat Big's side and asked, "Captain, how are we going to take so many people away?" Rat Big frowned, looking at the pregnant women and children. "Let's see what we can take away first. Look for animal skins and food, and baskets and other things that can hold things. If we really can't, we'll carry the baskets, and help them carry the children. If only we had a few ox carts." Beasttooth nodded. There was no other good way, so everyone turned the settlement upside down. All the usable animal skins and dried meat were taken away, and the Fire tribe's fire rats were all burned to death as dry food. Early the next morning, Rat Big cremated the 2 fallen youths with the demolished grass huts, and then led more than 1.20 women and children back to the city. Among these more than 1.20 people, there were more than 470 adult women, about 300 of whom were pregnant, and the rest were children. Everyone wrapped the children in animal skins, and then tied them to their bodies with ropes and vines, or simply carried them. The Han tribe warriors also helped carry the children. The fawns carried large baskets on their backs, loaded with dried meat and animal skins, which reduced the burden somewhat. The team began to walk towards the Han tribe, and the Fire tribe settlement behind them turned into a sea of fire. At the same time, in the Han tribe, it was just dawn, and Big Tree set off with the 20 people you arranged, 10 of them paddling small wooden boats upstream. Big Tree led the remaining 10 people riding horned deer and leading the oxen, driving the ox carts over the bridge on foot. The ox carts were loaded with mining tools, road repair tools, and wooden buckets for holding water. The newly built 3-meter wide small bridge was very strong, and there was no problem with the ox carts crossing the bridge with things. Big Tree had to lead the team to find a flat and wide enough road, and have the oxen pull the stone rollers to press it several times. If there were pits, he would dig stones and soil to pad it and then press it. It was just that this dirt road was not easy to maintain, and the next heavy rain might turn it into a muddy field. They walked north along the east bank of the small river, and did not go to the Black Rat tribe settlement, because it was already abandoned, but the Chestnut tribe, the former neighbor of the Black Rat tribe, wanted to go to the Black Rat tribe today. The Chestnut tribe had traded pottery pots with the Black Rat tribe last winter. After learning to cook things, they fell in love with it. But there were not enough pottery pots, so Chief Maury took a hunting team and a few newly adult girls to exchange for pottery pots. They walked all day and arrived at the Black Rat tribe settlement in the evening, but the scene in front of him made his scalp tingle. What on earth happened here?